I got an extra cut there, so I might as well fix it. So I created these jigs that fit the shape of the nose rib. I made one of them and then made the others identical to it with the router table and a bit with a bearing on it. And I got them strapped down tight because the first wing, this wasn't pulled as tight as it could be. This one should be tighter. Also, we put a reverse curve on this metal here so that when the nails go in here, hopefully it'll pull this tight, and we'll get it tight onto the angle aluminum under here, and it feels like it is tight, so that's good. I've got the two wing tip leading edge pieces fabricated and fit to butt up against the leading edge there, and this extends about an inch or so past the last nose rib, so I'll make a strip of aluminum that comes up and down here and rivet through there, and then rivet these pieces onto the part that sticks out here. And I discovered countersunk pop rivets, which I didn't know existed. So what you do is you create a dimple, which is the little countersink, and then you pop this in there and it's flush. So what I just made this little pair of gizmos on my lathe. This goes in the back side, and then you drill the hole and put two pieces of metal together, and then squeeze this one down on top, and it creates your dimple. And then you put your pop rivet in with your pop rivet gun. So what I'm going to do is take these and epoxy them to this C-clamp, and then I can just take the C-clamp and crank it down to create each dimple. This is aluminum because it's all I had sitting around. It's not ideal. It should be steel, but I didn't have any. So hopefully it'll last to do 60 or 80 dimples for my 4 wing tips. And I plan on redoing my first wing with a new leading edge. So anyway, that's what I'm doing. I'll epoxy these on here. Then I'll drill the holes along here, cut a strip out, drill the holes here and here. Put the dimples in with this guy, and then rivet these on here, and then, or I may just rivet the strip on initially, then mount the leading edge piece to the wing with epoxy and nails, and then rivet these on along with maybe some filler strips and epoxy along here. So that's where I'm at. Oh, and I've also got work started on both of the lower wings. What I've done so far is just basically the same as how I put the upper wings together. So this tube here will be for the compression tubes for the lower wings. There'll be one here, and then on the butt rib there'll be this piece of spruce, and then one here on this wing and there. So it'll be about 13.5 inches each, but I'll just cut these to 14 inches and then fine tune them from there. The final length should be about 13.5, but there's plenty of material here. I'll just cut each one to 14, mark it at 14, and cut it on my chop saw here, my miter saw. It's very, very clean cut. Super nice. I'll deburr it, but aside from that, it's usable just like this. So I feel like a real metal worker. I'm using Clecos. I bought 20 Clecos, which I think is more than I need, and a Cleco wrench here. I also rigged up a big C-clamp here, which was $8, with my two little aluminum pieces that I made, which cost approximately nothing. Just made them on my lathe and epoxied them on there. I'll just clamp this down on each one of these holes here and make a dimple out of it so I can countersink the rivets. And these Clecos are kind of cool, so I'm just drill the hole, put a Cleco in it, drill the next hole, put a Cleco, and I'm also just using this clamp with these pieces to protect the metal, to kind of clamp it as I went along and hopefully keep it fitting nicely. So now I'm going to remove these Clecos. I took these out over here. I'll remove these, and then I'll clean up the holes a little bit, and then I'll go ahead and try out my homemade dimpling tool there and actually dimple it and put the pop rivets in. And then I'll drill these wingtip leading edges. Those will be maybe a little trickier because I won't have good access here, and I kind of feel like I need to have this piece riveted in place and then butt the wingtip up against this just so I can get it fit properly. But I'll just need to hold it in place and drill through there. Hopefully this will be stiff enough that I can drill through. Well, I can I guess I can back it up with a block of wood or something. I can do this side, then I can do this side and hold a piece of wood in there to back it up. But it'll still be a little trickier to hold perfectly in place. Maybe I'll clamp it down here once I get this edge lined up nicely. So I think that'll work okay, won't be too tough. And then riveting in place will be a piece of cake too. So, ooh, that just reminded me, I should peel the plastic back. I've got the plastic on the leading edge here still. I'll, actually, yeah, I won't rivet this right now. I need to take the plastic off of there first. I'll take it entirely off the inside, and I can just peel it back a little bit here on the outside and leave it on the rest to protect it until I'm ready to make it permanent. Anyway, let me show you how a Cleco works. So this is a Cleco, and there's a spring in here, and it's a stiff spring, and you use this wrench. You buy one of these. It's a wrench made just for Clecos. And the way this thing works is this part of it slips over that flange right there, and this end fits into this little countersunk gizmo, and you squeeze the wrench here, and when you squeeze all the way, this gets pretty thin, and then you put it through a hole drilled in 2 sheets of metal, and then when you release this, that tip expands to fill the hole and comes back, and you can see the sharp edges right there. See those? The sharp edges come back against the sheet metal, and right about there clamp the 2 pieces of metal together. So it's just a clever way to line up a whole bunch of holes. Basically it helps you to do dry fitting. So I drilled a hole, and then I put one of these in the hole. Then I drilled the next hole, put one in that hole, and it would just keep the metal lined up while I went along without me having to actually put rivets in those holes or have a whole bunch of clamps. It's just a really nice way to dry fit pieces of sheet metal that you're going to rivet together eventually, but that you just want to dry fit right now. So there's a Cleco, and come over here and you can see how that is pulling on this side of the metal against this shoulder of the Cleco. So it holds these pieces of metal together. And I drilled a hole here, put a Cleco in, and I had a clamp originally. I clamped here, drilled this hole, put a Cleco in, and then I could just move my clamp around to keep this nice and tight and add Clecos as I went to keep the two pieces of metal nice and lined up. Those are Clecos. And if you see people building a sheet metal airplane, they might have hundreds of these mounted in two sheets of metal as they're doing dry fitting of two big pieces that have tons of holes. And these are like $1.60 each. They're not cheap. So you can spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on Clecos if you're building a sheet metal airplane. I just bought 20 of them, which is I think more than I need. But they're pretty cool. It's the first time I've used them. But they work real nice.